RC Sonic, the heart of your system.
I'm the Awarded for Kit Guru here with Thermaltake at CES 2020. I'm standing next to their brand new Distrocase to do this intro because it is mind-blowing. We're starting our tour of the room with the Distrocase 350p. I've done a separate video on this case because it's just so mind-bogglingly different. The fundamental point with this case is, as the name suggests, it's built around this distro plate here. The chassis and the distro plate are one and the same thing. It's got no glass on the front, no glass on the roof, so you get airflow and you get funky cooling. Unfortunately, it sounds like it's going to be at quite a high price, around about $500 to $600 US, and of course, zero filtration. But for bling and cosmetics and aesthetics, wow, that just looks the business. Walking past their power supplies, we see platinum and gold power supplies. The news here is that gold now has RGB. At Computex, we saw this distro plate, which is for a 360 installation with a D5 pump installed. That is a universal distro plate. There is also on show here this specific P5 distro plate specific to the P5 case. This has caused some heated debate with myself and Luke because the basic thinking behind this is when you buy a P5, it's a big case, a load of space, so you need to fill it. So you buy a big distro plate from Thermaltake. Luke thinks this is absolutely wonderful. This is very, very big news in America. The Americans love the P series. My personal view is buy a smaller case. Moving down the line, we have the Distrocase 350p that we just saw at the front of the room, so the same chassis, is just more tucked away here. And then we come to fittings. C Pro are, to my mind, the best fittings on the market. Unfortunately, only available in 16mm tube size, which is blooming big because Thermaltake goes big. The thing with C Pro is this, and I'm going to show you. The point here is the fitting comes apart into a number of parts and it's sealed with 4 O-rings. So that part there screws into the G-quarter fitting. This part contains the seals. That part then holds the tube in place. You don't have to allow 5mm for the tube to stick into the fitting. It goes flush on that part there. It's a brilliant fitting. If they make the thing in smaller than 16mm, it should be used by everybody using hardline tubing, in my opinion. And here we have the matching 90-degree fittings. The only thing is they've marked up the colours. If those are a colour match, then I am, as the saying goes, a Dutchman. At the moment, they need to work on the colours, but the principle of having matching 90s to go with the fittings, that makes perfect sense. Also, I'm just going to say this out loud, EK torque. That's all I'm saying there. We move along to this pump res unit. That's a regular D5. This is a regular tube, however, it is wider. So instead of making it taller, they've gone for wider. Also, if you look closely, you will note RGB top and bottom, so you have 2 cable connections for your 1 reservoir. I'm not mad keen on the idea, but I can see why they've done it. Basically, they're chucking a lot of ideas at the wall. Some of them will stick. To install this pump res, you need a bracket. It comes with mounts that allow you to mount it to a flat surface, or you can remove the mounts, install this bracket instead, and then you can install it to any 120mm fan mount in your case, either flat or at 90 degrees. An idea that might be either genius or crazy mad are these manifolds on these blocks. You might wonder why on earth the manifolds are so enormous. They are huge. However, if you come in the top, Luke, you will see the G-quarter fittings are out of line. The reason they're out of line is because these blocks here, the black blocks, rotate. So the idea is you can jiggle your alignment by eye. That's a good 15mm. There's a screwdriver slot, so once you've got a fitting in place, you'll be able to rotate that. You can go around 360 degrees to help align your CPU tube typically to your graphics card. While I can see that could be useful if you're really tight for space, because getting a bend in a short tube is impossible, in the main, I think that's just too big and bulky, but that could have its uses. These blocks, as the cards say, fit the 5700 and also 2080 Ti, and therefore I assume the regular 2080. W7 Plus CPU blocks, they are round CPU blocks, they have RGB, they do not fit Threadripper. They're aesthetic updates of existing blocks. They look perfectly pretty, they are quite big, and you can, if you choose, unthread that ring there and remove the logo plates and either modify it or replace it with your own, but obviously you have to make it to do that. So aesthetic update, perfectly pleasant. important. I recently used some CL360 radiators, which are super chunky copper radiators, 360mm in length and about 60mm in thickness. These are CLD, the D for double fin radiator. If I hold it up, hopefully you can see that it is all fin. You can barely see through that rad. We were having a conversation about this. We're convinced, Luke and myself, this is going to increase resistance to airflow significantly. However, Thermaltake is adamant that provided you use regular, reasonable high-pressure fans, you're going to be good to go, and this radiator will increase your cooling capacity. We think you're going to potentially have to move to push-pull fans and or crank up the fan speed a tad. However, you should be able to go thinner on the radiator compared to a 60mm monster. We're talking copper for the internals, the exterior, it's a mix of metals, but everywhere that water contacts, it's copper. Floe all-in-one liquid coolers in 122, 40, 60 sizes. The significant thing here is the pump has the RGB, the fans are dumb black without RGB. Obviously it saves money, and if you've got your fan radiator unit in the roof of the case, you can't see them anyway, so why bother RGBing it? That's a fair point. Also, that ring there can be rotated to align the logo with your installation. So if you rotated it, say 90 degrees, the pump that is, you can now move the ring to get it straight again. Nice and simple, we're talking budget AIOs. Battle Station is a monumentally expensive desk with rise and fall and a huge weight capacity. I did a review of this months ago. In fact, I slept on this desk for a few seconds. It cost £1,200, which was frankly far too much money. So loads of RGB, impressive feature in terms of how much weight it can lift, but completely over the top. By contrast, the Toughdesk 300 has no RGB. The lighting you can see there is in that matte. It has rise fall. Apparently it also has a control app that we haven't seen in action to allow you to control the height of your desk with your phone. As you've got buttons, I'm not entirely sure why that's necessary, but hey ho. They haven't given us a price, but assure us it is significantly less than the Battle Desk or Battle Station. As I say, the Battle Station was $1,200, so this would have to be a lot less, which would suggest the Battle Station has the world's most expensive RGB. Till we get a price, cannot comment further on that. We also have a number of mice. Again, furious debate here between Luke and self. I consider myself to have medium-sized hands. Luke has quite large hands. I find that a bit peculiar. Luke loves them. So what can you say? One thing here we have is a USB mouse, wired, not wireless, with a detachable cable. If the cable gets chewed, or indeed you want two installations, you want to move your mouse from desk to desk, you simply get another cable. This is a variant on the TK keyboard, which has been designed by Porsche. It has a detachable wrist rest. That is pretty much all there is to say. Cherry switches throughout, but we've come to expect that. And I don't have a price. I'm going to hazard a guess, fairly expensive. So it looks sleek, but there's nothing fundamentally new there. View 51TG, as the name suggests, is a larger version of View 31. Available in black and white, you're looking at 180 and 190 respectively, white costing you more. The key features here are, we have a hinged door, loads of tempered glass. We actually have gaps that will allow airflow, you will note. So therefore filtration is going to be questionable because the fans are directly behind that gap. And we have 4 radiator mounts. We've got floor, front, top and side. As you can see, they've got their own distro plate in that side position. So clearly that's holding coolant rather than allowing air to flow. They've also got a vertical GPU. 2 key points here in my opinion. One is these radiator brackets. If you don't have a rad installed and don't have fans installed, you don't want the ironmongery. Those brackets can be removed. So if they are not being used, you can clean it up. The other thing is, look, the vertical GPU is pretty much unsupported. This can be a problem in terms of sag, so you need to build carefully. That's all I'm going to say there. If you've got a really big, heavy graphics card, it might present you a problem. I note here the tube is doing some support work. That's a wise move on Thermaltake's part. The other thing is, we're discussing this, PCI Express riser cables. The cables are basically spec'd to PCI Express Gen 3. If you're using a Gen 4 card in vertical, you want to make sure your cable's up to the job. If you're using the cable for PCI Express storage, you may have a problem. Level 20 RS ARGB. This is proof that Thermaltake does occasionally listen to criticism, because this is not an RS, this is a GT with mesh. It's actually a GT that can flow air. Thank God for that, that's all I can say. So when I reviewed the GT, I found various things about it that I actually quite liked. The layout is good, it has multiple radiator installation locations, but it did not flow air worth a damn. Here we have, frankly, a cheaper version, because these panels are plastic. This is like $130 or some such, so I don't think it would be $99 in the UK, because that's not going to happen. But nonetheless, it is sensible money, and it ought to work reasonably well as a case. Hallelujah. The I/O panel is split. I would like personally to see USB on both sides, but that's one of those niggly little points. The case itself with mesh actually has the potential to work, so hurrah. Another minor update to this chassis is the RGB strip, so it's RGB rather than constant light. Fair enough, but it's not a big deal. The point here is mesh. Airflow. Thermaltake opened CES with a press release about the new versions of Toughram, here obviously shown in white. The key headline feature being maximum speed 4400 megahertz. About a year ago, I reviewed their water RAM, which is RAM that has a water block on top, but actually it's mainly about the RGB, and you have to hard tube it, and connecting it together can be, frankly, a pain in the neck. The functionality of water cooling DDR4 is, to my mind, pretty much non-existent. It does not require liquid cooling. So it's something of a surprise to see Water RAM Pro has been released. This is a kit. It is an AIO for your CPU that also has a block that liquid cools your RAM, and the kit is supplied with the RAM to ensure that everything is compatible. We don't currently have prices. You have to assume it's going to be quite a lot because it's a dedicated AIO that does both the CPU and the memory, and also includes the RAM, so that has to run you a pretty penny. Once again, the functionality of liquid cooling DDR4, not so sure. Toughram Z1 or Z1, as we Brits prefer to say, RGB, is cheaper memory that has a lower profile cooler and has a maximum speed 3200 megahertz. I believe the base speed's 2400 megahertz, so cheaper memory. And this is something of an oddity. Toughram DDR4, no mention of RGB, no sign of RGB, because there is no RGB. So it's a question of black and grey or white, with whatever that is, shiny. And the thing is, it's still got a tall heat spreader. Even though there's no light bar in there, it's still tall. Fairly pleasant to look at, maximum speed 4400 megahertz, but no RGB. And that's quite a rarity in a Thermaltake product. AHT600 in two variants, black and white, 230, 250 in the US, don't know what they're going to be in Europe. The AH apparently stands for attack helicopter. It does have a kind of slight Black Hawk thing going on. We open that screw there. Oh, look at that, that was close. And the panel swings open, and now you've got full access to the interior. It's a combination of materials, but that is steel, and this here is plastic. So really this case is all about the styling and the look. If you think something like Antec Torque, which is sort of motorcycle look or robot look, or Transformers, is that kind of thing. So it's an interesting chassis in that you can see everything that's going on, but really it's all about the look of the chassis. There are more interesting things on show in this room, the Distrocase case being one of those things. That was our tour of Thermaltake's room at CES 2020. Loads of good products to see. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the bell button, subscribe. Feel free to buy one of our t-shirts. I'm Rewarded for Kit Guru. This is CES 2020.